What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk. I am here with my man, Casey Passier, our fantasy football expert here on So Real Sports Talk. Casey, it's been a couple weeks, man. How have you been?
Good. I've been all right. This is the one I've been kind of waiting for. Football starts
I know,
tomorrow,
man.
so I'm getting ready
Football
to go.
starting mañana. We got week 1, game
Yeah.
1. So we're actually talking about stuff that's going to be affecting week 1 of our fantasy week. So I thought we could start this week with some start 'em or sit 'em. And I thought we would start with the wide receivers. So I'm gonna throw some matchups at you, some players and matchups, Casey, and I want to know if you would start these people, if you would sit these people, and always your eloquent way of explaining the why behind the what. All right, so let's start with the receivers that are coming out of Carolina. They're playing the New York Jets. We have Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, the rookie. The Jets defense has some question marks. They have some talent back there. Brand new coach. Saleh obviously is a defensive-minded coach, so you expect that defense to be the strength of the team. But Anderson and Marshall are both going to have a new quarterback that's thrown to them. Probably a motivated quarterback because he is coming from the Jets, right? So tell me about those two matchups. Who you would start, who you would sit, or if you would start or sit both of them.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that Sam Darnold gets the Jets to start off, and it's without Adam Gase. It's the fresh start for him. And I really like the wide receiving core in Carolina. I like all three of them quite a bit. But I think you're probably okay with sitting Robbie Anderson at this point. Just because I think Terrace Marshall is gonna really come in and kind of take over that number 2 spot. And while I like Robbie Anderson's, I like his connection with Sam Darnold because they did play in New York together. I just think that Terrace Marshall Terrace Marshall is probably probably the hidden gem in this class. He might be like that Brandon Ayuk. He might be not quite Justin Jefferson, but he's going to be the one that kind of rises up that everybody went, oh man, yeah, we should have taken this guy earlier.
Who do you think's the clear-cut number 1 in Carolina?
I think it's still DJ. I mean, aside from Christian McCaffrey, he might still get his 100 targets. I personally think that they start to veer away from that. If they are going to be competitive in the next few years, they're going to need him to be healthy. So I think they start to do a few things to shake it up and kind of prolong the life of him.
So you think DJ Moore is the clear-cut one over Robbie Anderson?
I do at this point. Robbie may still be the deep threat, but I think DJ Moore, that's the prototype wide receiver that I like. He can run after the catch very well. He is a deep ball threat, whereas Robbie Anderson, that's kind of his one trick.
Right. I just feel like production-wise, I think Robbie Anderson has put up a little bit better numbers fantasy-wise than DJ Moore has. So that's interesting that you think that might flip this season.
Yeah, I think we're ready for the DJ Moore true breakout. I think a couple people have been trying to call that in the past. Ever since his rookie season, he kind of had that not a breakout, but he had that 700 yards, 5-6 touchdowns in his rookie year that you want for your rookie wide receiver. And he's progressively gotten better, but he hasn't made that huge jump yet.
Right.
And I think if there's a time for him to do it, it's kind of primed right now.
Interesting. Jay Mangold, my man, Marvin Jones, a sleeper this year. We're actually going to get into sleepers for the wide receivers really, really soon. But I am assuring you that is a great name to drop because I know my man Casey is a big Marvin Jones fan. So let's go back down the list. Amari Cooper versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Coming off a little bit dinged up. Obviously has some competition there with CeeDee Lamb on the other side now. We don't know how Dak is going to be, but you're looking at Amari Cooper. Is that somebody you're starting or sitting?
I'm probably starting him tomorrow night. It's weird. Sometimes I don't like playing guys on Thursday nights, and sometimes I do. Sometimes I want to know exactly what I have points wise going into the weekend, and then there's other times that whoever the team might be, that I have that player on, that I'm just not, I want to save everything for the weekend and really explode then. But I like Amari Cooper and I like Dallas a lot this year. Amari seems to have like a huge chip on his shoulder. And while CeeDee Lamb's probably going to be the wide receiver one there in the future, I'm not sure it's going to be right away. Amari Cooper really does seem to have a big chip on his shoulder. He's talking about he's the best wide receiver in the game right now. And, whether or not he actually is, that's the wide receiver alpha mentality that you want.
Right. It's a tough matchup, right? The one thing that they have going for the matchup, I guess, is Tampa Bay could definitely sling it. So this might be like a high-scoring game, especially with the way Dallas has some question marks on defense. So if they put the ball in Dak's hands and say, hey, sling it, and all those receivers are a must start because, they can move the ball around. So I agree with you. I think Amari Cooper is a pretty safe bet to start. I
think they kind of said that their plan was to just start the season off like they did last year before Dak got hurt. So they're going to come out and they're going to move the ball all over the field.
Yeah, and I think they would have to, especially against Tampa Bay, with a team that's bringing back, a Super Bowl contending team, brought back everybody, and they're not trying to figure it out anymore. They know exactly how to play with each other, and so that's going to be a tough matchup for Dallas. I actually think is going to be a blowout for Tampa Bay, which is probably good for fantasy for Dallas because they do well in garbage time. So let's move on. Sterling Shepard with the Giants versus Denver. Now, this is interesting, right? Because they just brought in Kenny Golladay. Sterling Shepard used to be the one there. And Saquon should be coming back. But Danny Dimes, man, it's whether or not you believe in Danny Dimes or you don't believe in Danny Dimes. So when you look at Sterling Shepard, somebody who had, pretty solid season last year fantasy-wise when he did play, do you believe in him this year? You're starting him or are you sitting him against Denver?
This is probably a guy that I'm starting in my flex if I have him. He's going to start in a flex spot in a lot of my leagues. He's just one of those guys that doesn't seem to disappoint. He's not going to be your wide receiver one, and he's probably not going to have a wide receiver one season. But there has been nobody to throw the ball to in New York, and Kenny Golladay is there now, but he's already been banged up a little bit. We hope that he's going to be able to help that offense really explode because they need a lot of weapons. They need to be able to protect Saquon in a way. And the way that they've even treated Saquon in the preseason shows that, like, they kind of know what Saquon is, and they want to protect him. They're not going to waste him. So I think that Kenny Golladay really has to hit, or they're just going to lean on Sterling Shepard again. And he's going to be their second leading target wide receiver. And you're right with Danny Dimes. It's got to be this year, or he's going to be done. And that might be all the more reason for him to start slinging the ball all over the field if he's really got to prove it. And if they're going to protect Saquon in a certain way, then he's going to have to spread it out to other people.
Yeah, and I mean, Kenny Golladay obviously on paper is the better receiver than Sterling Shepard.
Yeah.
But there's something to be said about chemistry. And last year, Sterling Shepard was Danny Dimes' favorite receiver. He caught he had multiple games where he was like 8+ catches, so that just doesn't get replaced just because you bring in a talent like Kenny Golladay. So I do think he could be a productive receiver. I see him as like a wide receiver 2 or a flex option if you don't have like a good running back to put into that position. But yeah, probably a
Also,
start.
Evan Ingram's a little bit dinged up too, isn't he still?
Yeah, seems like he's always dinged up.
Well, yeah. And I think I even had him in my tight end rankings this year, or he was on the fringe or something.
Yeah.
And then in the last week or so, he's gotten dinged up again. And I mean, that's a talent that you hate to see wasted. But sometimes that happens at the tight end position. Those guys just they fizzle out right away.
Cool. Let's go over a name that people maybe aren't talking about too much, but he's moved in to be, one of the top receivers in Detroit, Tyrell Williams. Tough matchup against San Francisco, who I think defense is going to be top 5, if not top 3 this year. New quarterback, new coach. I still don't know if they have a kicker, but what do you think about Tyrell Williams? Is he somebody that you sit, somebody that you start? Is this somebody who might even be available in some leagues still on the waiver wire? Is this somebody you expect to have a big season this year?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just had my last redraft was on Sunday, and I was going to check here really quick, but I don't think Tyrell Williams was drafted, and he's probably available in some leagues, and I'd even consider dropping, like, if you have to have kickers and defenses, I'd consider dropping a second string kicker or defense just to go pick him up. Maybe even a second string tight end that's kind of cheap. I'd consider dropping them to go pick up Tyrell Williams. I would not play him this week, like you just kind of said, against San Francisco. But he looks to be the number 1 wide receiver in Detroit. And regardless of what that franchise kind of does, it's kind of the same thing as Houston. Brandon Cooks is going to be the wide receiver 1 in Houston, and you still want him rostered, and you still are going to be able to play him at certain points this year. And so I don't like Tyrell Williams this week, kind of like you said, but I like him. I like to be able to stash him. He doesn't have to fight for roster space, and if he's healthy, he's going to be on the field because it's probably going to be him and Quintez Cephas.
Right. Obviously, probably the top pass catcher there is going to be Hawkinset. I always don't know how to pronounce his name, but they got to have a receiver to throw to, and why not him, right? So that's good. The next 3 I want to bring up are people that are either coming off of injuries or a little bit dinged up. So the first one, Chris Godwin versus Dallas. Now, this is kind of interesting because all 3 of these are usually no-brainers. You got to start them. But because of the matchups and because of the injuries, there are question marks. So let's start with, tomorrow night, Chris Godwin. Is he somebody that you would start? Or would you start maybe another receiver that you have there that, might get some more targets?
Right. Literally earlier today, I was pretty concerned about Chris Godwin, and I pulled him out of a couple of lineups. But now he's been cleared. He has no injury designation going into the game tomorrow night. I'm not certain that it was a rest day. I think Antonio Brown set out of practice today, and they said that was a rest day. Like he's fine, he's healthy. They were just resting him. But Godwin doesn't have an injury designation now going into tomorrow night's game, so I would start him. I'm going to put him back into my starting lineups. He's one of those. He can go off for 30, and if it's a shootout, and if Tampa's going to go out and rout Dallas right away in week 1, he's going to be part of that.
Right. Absolutely. It's going to be interesting because a full season of Antonio Brown, I think, is going to probably cut into Chris Godwin's numbers more than I'm blanking right now on the other receiver. Mike Evans, yeah, because I think Mike Evans will always be a red zone threat for Tom, but all of those in the field yards, I think that Antonio Brown can take a big bite out of Chris Godwin's numbers. So it's going to be interesting seeing like all season how that dynamic plays out. And they still got Scotty Miller over there who, could be a productive player and get some catches. So it's going to be interesting what Tampa Bay does because, Tom usually doesn't have wide receivers that are good in fantasy because He just
Right.
moves the ball around so well. So,
But he's
it'll be
also
interesting
never
to
played
see.
with widers. He's never played with receiving core like this.
True.
It's even gotten a little bit better since last year. OJ Howard
Right.
looks to be healthy, and Giovanni Bernard is now there, so they have like a very legit veteran, capable pass catching running back. So, I mean, statistically and on paper, he has the best offense that I think he ever had. So it
Absolutely.
could get a little
Absolutely.
squirrely this year.
He actually has some names there. We saw what he was
Yeah,
able to do when he had a Randy Moss there the one year. So
yeah,
now he has, not receivers as good as Randy Moss, but at least all of them are big name receivers, which is something he rarely had over in
yeah.
New England.
He doesn't have to pluck these white guys from obscurity.
Short white guys that can go underneath, right?
Yeah.
The next is, once again, a no-brainer. However, with the injuries, you don't really know what to do. So Justin Jefferson versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, on paper, this is a must start, right? Cincinnati isn't really known for their defense. Justin Jefferson coming off of, the greatest rookie season ever, but he hasn't been healthy all off season. And I think he still has like a questionable designation on him going into this game. So what do you do, Casey? Are you starting Justin Jefferson? Are you sitting Justin Jefferson? Or do you just have to take the risk because of his upside?
Well, yeah, like sneakily, I didn't know much about him being injured, over the offseason. I had heard a little bit, but I didn't realize it was really affecting everything that much. I'm looking now, and it looks like he isn't injured. He isn't listed on the Vikings injury report for Wednesday. So that being said, I'm probably going to start him. This week one stuff, week one and week two. It's not that I think the coaches are trying to like play games, mind games that much, but I think that they're just being cautious. Having just the 3 preseason games, watching the few people that really went down hard this preseason, specifically Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, those kind of guys. They're going to be a little tentative, and they're going to make sure that those guys are going to be healthy going into week one. After this, I'm really going to make sure you pay attention to all of those things. Everything right now is from beat reporters and the guys that are kind of hovering around the preseason, hovering around the training camps, hovering around those fields. And you hear rumors. You're going to hear a lot of things that come out, but until it's actually put out by that team or that organization, you kind of have to wait. And it looks to be that's kind of what's happening here in the last couple of days with Godwin and Jefferson. Things are clearing up, and whether it was just being cautious or if it was just making sure that the whole team was going to be well rested going into week one. Minnesota's poised to make a run this year. They are going after it right now. It's not rebuild time. So it's important to make sure that those guys are healthy. And if Justin Jefferson's healthy, yeah, you play him week one.
Especially against this matchup with Cincinnati. Absolutely. Yeah. You got to start him. And here's the one I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. Odell Beckham Jr., right?
Yeah.
Coming off a season-ending injury, looks healthy in all of Instagram posts, but tough matchup against Kansas City. So, do you trust to start him week one?
Yeah, I'm probably not. I'm probably not going to start him week one. Yeah. I like Cincinnati's trajectory, and I like where they're about to go.
You mean Cleveland?
Oh yeah, Cleveland. Sorry. Yeah. I do like Cincinnati's trajectory as well, but Cleveland's a little further along. But I'm probably waiting. I'm waiting on Odell a little bit. I need to see him be as explosive as he was, or at least close to that. And I don't want to play him against Kansas City right away.
Yeah. The only upside is it could become a game that, like, clearly Cleveland's strategy is going to be give the ball to Chubb, give the ball to Kareem Hunt, keep the ball out of Mahomes' hands as much as possible in that Kansas City offense. If that plan doesn't work, then they have to probably air the ball out and try to keep up as far as with the scoreboard. So that's the only benefit because Jarvis Landry is more of the possession receiver and OBJ is the home run hitter, right? So that, you always have that, I guess, upside that he could just go for a 40-yard, 60-yard touchdown and, get even a couple of those. A lot like what Tyreek Evans does for Kansas City. That's what OBJ is supposed to be for Cleveland. It's just we haven't seen it over the last few years. So it's kind of hard to think that all of a sudden he could just turn it back on,
Right. And I kind of like Donovan Peoples-Jones because of that. Until OBJ can show that that's going to be him again. I like Peoples-Jones. I think he's their deep threat home run guy. Maybe.
And they picked up a rookie from Clemson, right? That I think is pretty good too. The name's slipping me, but I think they got a rookie.
Cleveland got a guy from Auburn, Anthony Schwartz, who was he was ridiculously fast, kind of world-class track speed.
Got you.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's even number 4 or 5 on that depth chart right now.
Okay. Well, some things that I did leave off the list were all the rookie wide receivers. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about what rookies you would start and also maybe some sleepers at the wide receiver position that you might throw into your flex or your wide receiver 2, position based off of their matchup this week.
Sure. The first 2 that kind of jump out is Devonta Smith. The first one is Devonta Smith.
They play Atlanta, so Atlanta's defense isn't anything to be scared of usually.
Yeah, and I expect him to be the wide receiver 1. And watching him in preseason, he was creating separation in preseason that was, just like in college. It doesn't look like he's going to have any problem doing what he did in college. So I like him to start right away in week 1. And I also like just because it looks like Curtis Samuel is not going to be playing this week. They said he's either going to go or he's not going to go at all. He's not going to be limited at all. So I like Diami Brown. I think he is going to be filling in that Curtis Samuel role. He's his backup specifically until he probably takes that job from him. And if he gets a chance to do it right away week 1, that could be something pretty cool.
And we did talk about Terrace Marshall. You believe he should be somebody that you start as well, right?
Well, I'm not sure. It kind of depends on Sam Darnold. It depends on that offense. I'm not sure if I would start him week 1. And that's depending on how deep your league is, if you have a couple of flex positions to fill, then you might have to start him. But I was more specific. I was specifically saying that you don't have to start Robbie Anderson. That's probably
gotcha. Okay,
I would sit him. Yeah.
What about Chase and
Waddle? Waddle. Waddle, I don't mind playing at all week 1. I think that he's a good guy to throw into your flex because he has that home run potential. He's a guy. He's a guy like Tyreek Hill who would put up 2 touchdowns. He's a guy like OBJ that could put up 2 touchdowns right away and kind of shock us all. So I don't mind playing him week 1, especially since Will Fuller is going to be out. If things are shaky with Waddle in week 1 and then Will Fuller comes back, you could probably put Waddle on the bench and let him sit there for a while. But if you want to take a little risk and play Waddle, I think that's a sneaky play because he could explode. And then as far as Jamar Chase, I'm probably waiting. I'm probably going to wait a game with Jamar Chase. There's one league I think I might have to play him in just because I don't have enough wide receivers. But I'm going to wait on Chase just until he gets his shakes out or whatever he's dealing with.
Well, we get to see whatever he is, right? Because obviously all the talk about him out of training camp hasn't been that flattering. And, Minnesota is a tough matchup, I think, as well. They have their defense is, decent. That is a tough matchup. The Waddle, I think Miami's playing New England, right? Week 1. So that's a tough matchup as well. So I don't know how Tua is going to do, but But yeah, I think another person to keep an eye on is the rookie receiver out of the Jets, Elijah Moore. Is it Elijah Moore? He's
Yep.
somebody who I think has been making a lot of waves in the Jets
Yeah.
training camp, and they don't really have a wide receiver two that on paper is necessarily better than him, right? They have Corey Davis, who should slot in as the wide receiver one, but that wide receiver two position is wide open. And I think he's kind of earned it, at least through training camp, is what I've been hearing. So he's another name that I think could be a sneaky, like under the radar type of receiver that could still be available in a lot of leagues, and is probably somebody who is going to get a lot of play this year.
Yeah, I like Elijah Moore a lot. I remember right after he was drafted, AJ Brown was posting on Instagram and breaking down, and both him and DK Metcalf and OBJ have all been like singing this guy's praises and talking about
Right.
how, like, if given the chance, this guy can be better than all of us. Everyone's kind of like, really? And he went to the Jets, like, and drafted that late. Like, all right, we'll take your word for it.
Right.
But I'm not sure. It looks like he's slotted in as one of the top 3 starting wide receivers right now for the Jets. That's not enough for me to play him week 1, but I've heard some of the same things. And if he comes out and is that dominant, kind of, he's supposed to be this guy that's going to take over for Corey Davis. Even he's not going to be obviously the big body wide receiver, but he's supposed to be this next best thing. And if he takes over week 1, then yeah, I'll slot him in after that. If we find a wide receiver that can actually connect and hook up with Zach Wilson, I mean, stock's up on Zach Wilson right now. I'm on board. I've drank that Kool-Aid. Like, if we can find a wide receiver to hook him up, and it's Elijah Moore, it's going to be fun to watch.
Right. But the Jets are going to be a run first team, so I don't know how much they're actually going to be throwing the ball. I figure it'll be pretty similar to the 49ers offense, just because that's where Salah, and obviously they brought over the pass coordinator from the 49ers as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. Let's talk about just some steals or some under the radar wide receivers. Obviously, Mangold talked about Marvin Jones. I know you're high on him. Who are some guys that you think that could be still maybe on the waiver wire, or people that may have a favorable matchup this week?
Yeah. Well, Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault. I think that both of them are going to see quite a few targets in Jacksonville. And I think because Travis Etienne is out, I think you're going to see Shenault slotted into that swing pass, screen pass, jet sweeps, even running right out of the backfield every once in a while too. I think Laviska Shenault is kind of he's my big sleeper on the year. I'm really excited about him. Coming out, he had some injury concerns. He seemed to always be beat up out of Colorado, but it seemed to just be some soft tissue stuff, and they used him a lot there. He would get 20 touches a game as a wide receiver because he was also taking handoffs in the backfield too. It was kind of crazy. So now that he's got talent surrounding him, he's not going to be the focus for defense, and he's got a guy that can distribute the ball pretty well. I like Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones. Sterling Shepard is kind of my comp to like Marvin Jones. He's almost always going to be fantasy relevant. So he's probably going to beat out all of your other wide receiver 3s, and you're going to play Marvin Jones in a lot of spots this year. And if Trevor Lawrence is what we hope he's going to be, I think those are the 2 wide receivers on that team that we really have to watch for.
I like it. So, we just spent the first 30 minutes on wide receivers. So I think it's time to move on. So let's go to running backs. And let's start with the game on Thursday. We got, obviously, Ezekiel Elliott, I think, is a must start. But on the other end, with Tampa Bay, they have a pretty deep, running back core right now. Ronald Jones, obviously, was RB1 for them all last season. Do you believe he's going to get the same workload this season? And is he somebody that you start against that Dallas defense?
Yeah, with 3 running backs now in Tampa Bay, being Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, and Giovanni Bernard, because I think Bernard is going to he's going to come in and take some touches away from Ronald Jones. Not that Ronald Jones caught a lot of balls. In fact, they used Fournette instead because of that.
Right.
But I think that means that Fournette might be taking over a lot more of Ronald Jones, his play time or his snaps. So I would probably be sitting Ronald Jones this week, tomorrow night, but I might play Fournette, just because I think that Tom Brady wants that kind of veteran presence. I think that inside, down by the goal line, inside the 5-yard line, they're going to want that option to be able to hand the ball off instead of just throwing it up to Mike Evans or throwing it up to Gronk. So I do like Fournette for maybe 70 yards and a touchdown, which puts him at double digits, and that's probably fine. He might even catch a ball or two. But I'm probably not going to play Ronald Jones until he really proves that he's going to take that over.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a little bit of a fumble issue last season, but overall, I think that he played really well. I mean, I think he was solid last season as a fantasy RB1. So to see that, to believe that Giovanni Bernard is just going to come in and take stuff away, but then you did see at the tail end of the season, Tampa Bay was leaning on Fournette a little bit more than Ronald Jones. I think there was some injuries to play a role in that, but who knows, man? Yeah. I don't know.
I like Ronald Jones, and I wasn't a huge fan at first when he came into the league. I just thought he came in, I think he was really young, like a sophomore or a junior, but he was very, very young. But his progression, the way that he has gotten better every year that he's been in the league. I mean, he was kind of a joke those first 2 years. Like, you're not going to start him. You're not going to play him. And now he's a viable fantasy option. And he might even be a great trade option for them later in the season if they need a piece elsewhere.
Ryu Ken jumped in. 10-man league. Should I start Brandon Cooks, T. Higgins, or Corey Davis over Gus Edwards? I'm not starting anybody over Gus Edwards. He is the only running back that Baltimore has back there. They've been the number one rushing attack the last 2 years. I think that you got to start Gus Edwards. He's probably going to get you more consistent points than all 3 of those guys, just because of how much Baltimore runs the ball, and he has no competition right now as far as who's the starting running back there. I guess maybe is Ingram still there? I'm not sure.
No, Ingram is in Houston now.
Okay, yeah. So
they did sign Lev Bell today, but Bell is just on the practice squad, which that won't last long. I'm sure that he'll be brought up to speed pretty soon, and he'll be part of the he's a veteran name. They're going to use him in certain aspects, but they're not going to lean on him much. It's going to be Gus Edwards.
So are you starting any of these receivers over Gus Edwards?
Probably not.
Right.
Probably not.
I think Gus Edwards is going. I think Gus Edwards is going to be a sleeper running back because he's probably somebody who didn't get drafted very high, if at all, and he just moved into RB1 for the Baltimore Ravens, who always is going to get touches. So.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different than the J.K. Dobbins situation, where Dobbins had Gus Edwards to compete with for touches. Gus Edwards has no one else right now.
Right, except Lamar Jackson. But but that's for another day. So hope that helps you out, Ryu. Good luck this week, my man. It looks like you got some pretty good receivers there, but I would definitely start Gus Edwards in that flex.
But be excited about Corey Davis.
Yes.
That's nice to have.
Let's go. I mean, you had some guys on this list that I was a little bit wondering why they were on the list, because to me they were no-brainers. The first one is James Robinson versus Houston. I think that's a no-brainer. You got to start him, right? There's nobody else in that backfield. Rookie quarterback. They're going to run. They're going to, that running back is going to be important. I think that's a no-brainer. You got to start him, especially what he was capable of doing last season. So why did you have him on this list?
I had him he's on my start list.
Okay, good.
I just gave you a list of everything mixed together, but he's on my start list on that side. Just because I think he might be a guy that some people forget about a little bit, or they'll look over him, just because Travis Etienne's still fresh in their mind. Still not expecting much out of Jacksonville. I was just kind of making sure that if you have James Robinson, no matter who your other running backs are, I mean, unless you have CMC and Zeke, then maybe you don't have to play him. But I would still play him in my flex then,
Right.
because he's playing Houston, like you said, and they got to protect this new quarterback. If things go awry, or just to be able to take the pressure off of him and make sure that they can move along with the game plan and move along with his development, they're gonna feed this guy the ball. He showed that he could do it last year as a rookie,
Yeah.
and they really haven't brought in much else to help there. Carlos Hyde is there. I yeah, the Urban Meyer connection is there with Carlos Hyde, but I can't believe he's going to cut in to that much work with James
Right.
Robinson. So I'm starting him week 1 for certain.
I mean, James Robinson was a top 10 running back last
Yeah,
season on
yeah,
a much less talented team.
yeah,
So I would only expect his numbers to either stay the same or even improve now that there's, a quarterback there, weapons on a receiver and all this kind of stuff. So I think that he's a no-brainer. He could easily have a RB1 season this year.
sure.
And
Yep, you do it
just like
again.
he did last season. So that's somebody who I think if you have on your team, you're in a good situation because you probably got him lower in the draft because most people thought Etienne was probably going to be the guy. So you probably have a couple other good running backs on your team as well. So he's somebody that you put as the flex every single week, and no matter what the matchup is.
I'm trying to go trade for him in the dynasty league that we're in. It's not working out too well.
The other guy that was to me a no-brainer that was on this list was Darrell Henderson from the Rams, obviously playing the Bears this week. Bears are a good defense, but he's their only running back, right, with Cam Akers down now. So to me, I believe he's a must start because the Rams do run the ball heavily. Even though Matthew Stafford is there, I still imagine that Henderson is still going to get quite a few touches. Are you seeing it the same way, or do you see that maybe Henderson's somebody to maybe sit?
No, I think that I sit him this first week.
Wow. And why is that?
Yeah,
Why are you sitting him knowing that the Rams, run the ball so well?
sure. I think that we do see a little bit more of a drastic change and a little bit more that they're going to be leaning on Matthew Stafford more than they even intended on doing. And I think them acquiring Sony Michel is going to really help out Matthew Stafford in that regard, and they're going to be using him on third downs. They're going to be using him during passing situations. Because I think it looks like I think Sony Michel kind of dropped like 10, 15 pounds, or maybe 5-10 pounds. He slimmed down a little bit this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think going into this situation in LA, we might see a little bit more of the Georgia Bulldogs, Sony Michel, rather than this beefed up between the tackles guy that New England tried to make him into. He wasn't necessarily that guy in college. So I'm hesitant on Darrell Henderson. If they went and drafted Cam Akers, it was because they didn't trust this guy. And from what I understand, I think that Darrell Henderson was a Les Snead guy. It wasn't a Sean McVay pick. This was a Les Snead pick.
Interesting.
The Rams general manager. And so it's not to say that they're going to work this guy out of the job, but they're going to make sure that they have guys to do the job that they actually need to get done. And I think helping Matthew Stafford out in the passing game is why Sony Michel was brought in. I think that's because Darrell Henderson, they're not so sure about in that part.
Interesting. Once again, I think he had a really solid season last year when he was playing before. Most people drafted Cam Akers really high last season and didn't really get anything out of him because he didn't really play till like the playoffs, and that was already done for the fantasy. As far as fantasy, he wasn't really that. And Darrell Henderson pretty much.
But if you're using that strategy, I like that strategy though. That's why I like drafting rookie running backs a little bit later in redraft leagues. You target one or two of them, and they pop off because Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, even Saquon was he was a beast that entire season.
Right.
But those rookies, they tend to pop off in the second half of the season. And when you are lacking running back depth or you are suffering injuries elsewhere, these rookie running backs step right in and can win you championships. So I like that situation. Yeah.
Cool. Let's move on. So a couple of guys that may have some injury issues or some competition with some rookies that were drafted. First is going to be Josh Jacobs of the Raiders. His matchup is tough. Baltimore. Obviously, he had the rookie season that everybody felt like, okay, this is the guy. Then he came back a little bit injured in his second season. Didn't have the fantasy season that everybody was excited about. Seems to be coming off of an injury still, but is the main guy there with the Raiders. Tough matchup against Baltimore, but he's probably one of your top two running backs based off of where you drafted him and who you have. So is this somebody who you start, or is this somebody who maybe you like start somebody else over?
Sure. And this was, I think I put him on the list with Chris Godwin that I gave you. And it was kind of because because of this injury or mispractice designation that they were getting. And, from what I'm looking at right now, Jacobs has missed 2 practices. It's not updated today, but it says the last 2 practices that he missed as yesterday. And it was not for an injury. It just looks like he has been absent and not with the team for the last 2 practices. So I don't know exactly what that means. If he's away just handling some family business and he's going to be back in time for the game and everything is kosher, then yeah, you start him. Everything's fine. But if there's something else going on, then and you're right. You probably drafted him at your 1 or 2 or your first or second round. So you're scrambling and trying to find somebody else to replace him. Hence me trying to find James Robinson in that league.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because, Jacobs, if he's playing, that he's going to be a solid starter. It's just whether or not he's going to be playing. And that's the trouble with him. He's inconsistent as far as with injuries. And once again, this is something that was just a big question mark. Nobody really knows if he's healthy or not and if he's going to be playing week 1. So I guess that's one that you gotta kind of wait till, right before and see if he's healthy. And if he's healthy, you probably start him. If he's not, hopefully you took him out of your lineup before.
Before the game started. And here's the thing: they don't play till Monday night, so
it's tough.
We've got to start thinking in this way again. Like you've got to either take him out of your lineup completely, or you've got to go put him in the flex, and you also have to have somebody else that plays on Monday night.
Right.
So if you're going to put him into you take him out of your running back position and you put him in your flex, and then you pick up somebody off the waiver wire, you go trade for Kenyon Drake, and you have somebody else, or you just have somebody else that plays that night that you can put into the flex spot, or you can't risk it and you have to bench him.
Yep, that's where the strategy comes in, right?
Yep.
The next person I had was Melvin Gordon, Denver versus the New York Giants. Now, this is interesting because they did pick up a rookie that's supposed to be pretty effective. They also have Lindsey there still, who, played well in spot duty. So that Denver backfield is now a little more, there's a lot more running back depth there. So do you think Melvin Gordon is going to be their workhorse, or do you think they spread the ball around?
I think that they just use these 2 running backs that they have, but Melvin Gordon's going to get the majority of that in the first half of the season. I'm pretty sure Mike Boone is injured and he's out. So they've got, or maybe he's back because they did just release Royce Freeman, right? Freeman went and signed with Carolina.
And so I misspoke. Lindsey went to the Texans, so I guess it's just the rookie over there.
Yeah, they did look pretty well set, but Mike Boone must be okay or must be coming back relatively soon. But I like Devonta Williams as one of those guys that might help you win the championship later in the season. I could see him taking over the majority of the carries. majority of that workload in the second half of the season. Especially if Denver ends up not being that competitive. If they're flip-flopping quarterbacks and going back and forth and not knowing what to do, they could move on from Melvin Gordon, or just start to cut his carries down so they can really figure out what they have in Devonta Williams and know how to build with that. But I do like Melvin Gordon in the first half of the season. Sometimes I think you gotta. Sometimes I like to break it up into some sections. Like play the season in quarters. Like the first 4 games, make sure you have a good lineup for those first 4 games. But be prepared for certain types of injuries. Be prepared for people losing jobs.
COVID.
Divide it up into quarters. COVID, yeah. Be prepared for all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I did want to thank Low the Truth 05. Thank you for keeping us on our toes, man. Making sure that we're being honest over here. My last one is Devin Singletary versus Pittsburgh. Now, Buffalo has to have a running back one. Happens to be Devin Singletary, at least on their depth chart right now, even though Zach Moss is there as well. People have been waiting for Singletary to pop off. Is this the year that he finally puts it together? And is Pittsburgh the right matchup to see if that's possible or not?
I guess it all depends week 1 if TJ Watt actually decides to play.
Right.
People are speculating he might hold out this week, but I don't know. I almost put Devin Singletary on the list that I sent to you, so it's kind of fun that you added this one to the list to try to surprise me.
Well, look, because Buffalo's offense is going to be insane, right? It's going to be a very high-powered offense. They obviously got an amazing quarterback. They have one of the best receivers. So there's going to be opportunities there, and they're going to need to balance it out. They can't just throw the ball 50, 60 times a game. They're going to have a running game there. So Singletary is the guy that they give more carries to over Moss, it seems like. He doesn't get yards. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to change this season.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I mean, and to be honest, I'm probably staying away from both of those guys as much as I can. I think I have Zach Moss rostered in 2 leagues, and I have to play him in 1 this week. But I don't have a single share of Devin Singletary anywhere, and I don't know. There's no running back in Buffalo since LaShawn McCoy that's really dominated the backfield or had the heavy workload and actually done well with it. So I'm probably staying away until somebody really wants to step up and grab that job.
I agree. I mean, neither of those running backs in Buffalo are people that I trust. And
I like a lot of other pieces there. I like a lot of other stuff that's going on. Just not the running back.
I think they're a pass first offense, regardless of how much they try to say they're going to run the ball. I think at the end of the day, you give the ball to your stud quarterback and have them throw it to your stud receivers. So,
and think of how many touchdowns he's going to leech from them in the down the 2-yard line. They just need Josh Allen just to fall over to score a touchdown.
That's true. That's true. So this is going to be interesting because I think rookie running backs actually play a big role in fantasy. There's a lot of studs that came out. So what rookies are you looking to start week 1? And I know my favorite running back in the draft, Najee Harris, is obviously a must start for the Pittsburgh, Steelers. I think he's going to be, a top 10 running back in fantasy this year. So for me, that's a must start. I'm sure you agree, but I don't know if you're as high on him as I am, but I think he's going to be somebody that could be offensive rookie of the year this season.
Okay. Yeah, that's big. Yeah, that's pretty big. I might not be that high on him, but I'm probably starting him week 1. Pittsburgh is looking for that guy. They drafted him to be that guy. But I'm going to slot him in probably in every spot that I have him, which I think is only 1. But
right. He was tough to get.
I'm going to play him.
Tough to get.
Yeah, he was. One, you had to make the decision, if you're in rookie drafts for Dynasty League, you had to make the decision if you're going to go quarterback or running back. If you're going to go running back and you wanted him, you had to have a top 3 pick. And then he was going in, I think he's going in the second or third rounds of redraft.
Right.
And I mean, that's just insanely high. You got to pass over a lot of good wide receivers to get to him.
Right.
And but if you got him starting in week 1 and you're starting him every week.
For sure.
There's
Any other rookies you're looking at that could play a big role that you're starting week 1?
Yeah, I might start Trey Sermon in week 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, just because I think that down at the goal line, he might be the guy that gets the work. In trusted carry situations, he might be the guy that gets the work. And all you need is a touchdown. All you need is a touchdown out of the running back to make sure that you got your double-digit points. And I mean, Raheem Mostert has got to stay healthy.
Absolutely. And I think that's a running back by committee offense for sure. And, you know, the 49ers letting go of Wayne Gallman, I think is a big, a lot to be said of how much they trust Trey Sermon, because I think one of those two was going to be that role down at the goal line. And more than likely, you know, it's going to be Trey Sermon now because, you know, he's the bigger body out of, you know, him and Mostert. So that is interesting. That is a guy that probably more like a flex than a running back too, but he is somebody that you can slot in and start. Tell me what you think about the rookie and with the Jets. They seem like they're going to be a run-first offense. I think Coleman is their running back 1 right now, who in my eyes is past his prime at this point. So is that somebody who you would start?
Yeah, and I don't think you can start him week 1, just because they do have Tevin Coleman slotted in, like you said, as the week 1 running back. And I really think that Ty Johnson is kind of outplayed Michael Pirine, and it looks like they're going to have quite a few guys sharing that workload in the backfield. So I'm probably waiting on Michael Carter, although I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to throw the ball a little bit more than we're expecting. And if that's the case, then Michael Carter becomes a really good flex option. He becomes somebody he's going to be their pass catching running back. So I would just put him on standby, wait a week or two, and see what this Jets offense really wants to go and do. But you might be right. If Michael Carter could beat out Ty Johnson, because Tevin Coleman is probably due.
Right. It's really tough. Week 1 is interesting just because you don't know how these teams are going to play, especially with the way preseason was handled this year, where just so many players were just not playing. So you don't really know who to trust. You don't really know what these offenses are going to do. You don't really know who's good, who's not. I mean, people could be stars in preseason and not even play at all, you know, week 1 just because.
And then trying to anticipate how good the defenses are going to be too.
Right.
Like, we know that Chicago and LA are supposed to have pretty strong defenses. So the guys that you want to slot that are going to be slotted up against them in week 1, you typically don't want to play. But we don't know.
Absolutely. That's why you got to be a GM, right? You got to be thinking strategy. Got to take the risks. That's what's fun about fantasy. Is there anybody outside of the rookies as a running back that you think could be a dark horse that might be available or might be just a great matchup this week that you would start?
Out of running backs?
Right. For me, it's Mike Davis with Atlanta.
Yeah, I almost put him on this list for you too. But I felt that one was a little too obvious. I think I have him on a team, I'd probably be playing him just because of the workload.
And they just picked up Gallman, but I don't think they're going to be able to get him the touches right away to work him into the offense. Mike Davis had a really great season last year in CMC's absence with Carolina. A lot of people because he went to Atlanta, was kind of like a under the radar kind of move. And I think maybe people might have forgotten how good he was. But
everybody was expecting Atlanta to draft a guy or even bring in more people to Mike Davis, and it just never happened.
Exactly. So they must trust him. it's just about how much you trust that Atlanta offensive line and whether, I mean, they're going to be a pass first team, but I still think he gets enough touches to be a worthy person to start.
Sure.
And somebody you probably could have got pretty late in your drafts as well.
Yeah. Another guy, which depending on when you drafted, you might have had to reach for him a little bit, but Chase Edmonds, I would consider putting him in a flex this week.
He might even be a wide running back 1 or 2. He played really, really well. When Drake went down for Arizona. Arizona obviously is in year 3 with that quarterback and that offensive system. This is where, it's make or break at this point.
Yeah.
And Edmonds has that speed that, kind of like Raheem Mostert, where, that's pretty tough, especially with a guy like Kyler Murray in the backfield as well, that you have to keep your eyes on. That's somebody that I think is going to have a big season as well. So I think that's a really great pick as well.
Yeah. I would look for Kenyon Drake. I would look for him and like Ty Johnson maybe. I would look for those kind of guys on the waiver wire. I'd pick them up just because you don't know what's going to happen with Jacobs this weekend.
That's true.
And because we don't know exactly who's going to be taking over in New York. Look for those kind of guys on your waiver wire where if there's any question mark in a backfield. Just because if you somehow fall into a starting running back, whether it, if you draft a starting running back in the rounds 1, 2, or 3, or you get a starting running back in round 10, the value of them is a lot more condensed than it is with wide receivers or tight ends even, or quarterbacks. They're all kind of squished together. So guys like James Robinson, that happens almost every single year.
Right.
Not necessarily a rookie, but maybe an undrafted guy like Philip Lindsay, guys like Arian Foster. They're going to come out of nowhere, and you're going to get them at a value, and they're going to help you win championships, and that's what we want to do.
Absolutely, especially with COVID and the injuries that we've been seeing from these running backs.
Yeah.
Some of these backup guys are going to be guys that are important to pick up. Like, I mean, James Conner is now the backup in Arizona. That's somebody who, if Chase Edmonds go down, could obviously be a viable starter. Same thing you talked about Kenyon Drake. I know you like the backup in Dallas as well.
I was just going to say, we do that with guys like Tony Pollard and Alexander Madison. Like, everybody jumps on those guys and wants to, almost they become really big fans and they want those guys to win the starting job even. Like Madison truthers and Tony Pollard truthers. And if they start anywhere else, they're going to be an RB1, and that might be right. But you want to jump on those guys quick and early. A lot of times they're drafted in your draft. Like Tony Pollard is one of those first handcuffs that is drafted. But you want to go find that other guy. Myles Gaskin is one of those late running backs that gets drafted, and they're expecting, they're still expecting pretty good production out of him. So
even Dylan,
go and find his backup, Savon Ahmed. Go get him.
Or even a guy like Dylan, who is behind help me out with the running back, Aaron Jones, right?
Yeah.
But I think he's going to have a bigger role this season as well. Especially because they let Williams go. So running backs always interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say 2 guys you might want to look out for in Chicago is Damian Williams and the rookie Khalil Herbert. Just because David Montgomery is going to get like almost that entire workload. Tyreek Hill, if he's healthy, is going to catch some balls, but he's not going to carry the ball that much.
Right.
It's going to be a David Montgomery show there. And if he goes down, it's going to be one of these other 2 guys. And whether it's the waiver wire or going and trading a couple pennies for him to somebody that already drafted him, those are guys that are going to stage your season sometimes.
Right. And I'm looking at also the running backs over in New England. I think they're going to be all those guys are going to be productive running backs. I think they're going to get a lot of tread. Low the Truth talked about Chuba Hubbard. I think that's a great pick. I mean, even if McCaffrey doesn't go down, I think that he's going to be. I think he's going to get a a lot of play because I think they're going to want to save McCaffrey. I don't think they're going to use him quite as much as they've used him in the past just because of that injury, and they want to keep him healthy the whole season. So Chuba Hubbard is somebody who definitely could play a big role.
Yeah. And they didn't go out of their way to add anybody else. I mean, they brought Royce Freeman in after he got cut, but they didn't go trade anybody. They didn't go sign a crazy veteran somewhere. They even Chuba there.
And they let go of such a great, running back in Mike Davis, who did such a great job for them. So obviously, I think that Hubbard is going to be somebody who's a great pick. Great, another great comment from Lo the Truth, man.
Yeah.
Really winning the day right now. I don't know, but I love him or her, whoever it is. So let's move on to QBs. QB situations are, I think, a little more standard than most, but I did bring up some people that I think are interesting as far as whether or not they should start. And, most places, these are going to be probably, most of the guys might be like borderline, but we'll still talk about it. Let's start with Baker Mayfield versus Kansas City, right? So
sure.
Baker Mayfield is in the last year of his contract, so it is a prove it type year for him. This is the healthiest that he's going to have as far as his offense, to have OBJ there, and Austin Hooper's healthy, obviously the running backs, and Jarvis Landry. He's been, second year with Kevin Stefanski as the coach, who I think has done a great job over there at Cleveland in his first year.
Yeah.
This team has a lot of expectations. Do you think that Baker is somebody to start versus Kansas City? Are they going to use his arm, or is he just going to be designated handoff guy?
Yeah. Well, before I kind of even get to that, like if I have Baker in my redraft leagues, if I have Baker on my team, it means that I have put off quarterback and I drafted them really, really late, right? Because Baker's kind of the guy he's not going to go extremely early. So I'm probably only going to have one or two quarterbacks, and because Baker's probably my first quarterback that I take, I'm going to start him. But that being said, aside from the strategy, Kansas, like you said earlier when we were talking about OBJ, Kansas City game might end up being a shootout, and so we might get to see Baker really kind of unleash some things. And it'll be fun to see Baker and Patrick Mahomes go at it again. Not many people remember or even realize that these guys played each other in college, and they kind of have a little bit of that history of moving. Baker moved on from Texas Tech to Oklahoma, when Patrick Mahomes came on and filled in. I'm going out of my way to start Baker. I'm not gonna start him over somebody like Justin Herbert or even Kirk Cousins. I'm probably gonna start Kirk Cousins over him. But again, if I have Baker on my team, I don't have those other guys, so I'm probably gonna start him.
Yeah, I mean he's probably your backup quarterback. So whomever you picked first is probably must start.
For a lot of other people, but not for me. Not for me. That's probably the first. That's what I'm saying is I draft quarterbacks so late in my redraft leagues that he's probably my best quarterback. So I'm going to play him, but I'm going to have two really stud running backs I'm going to play against you. So
right.
I'm not worried about quarterback.
Another guy. So it's been not necessarily announced by the team yet, but it's kind of out there. The 49ers put out their depth chart, and Jimmy Garoppolo is quarterback 1. Once again, probably same situation as Baker Mayfield. He's probably most likely your backup quarterback that you picked up because he was the only one left kind of position. Is he somebody that you start against a favorable matchup in Detroit? Is he somebody you look to start or somebody you look to stay away from?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because there's always this whenever the starting quarterback in San Francisco goes down, those other quarterbacks step in, and as long as there's a healthy wide receiving core, those quarterbacks are fantasy viable. So as long as this whole wide receiver core
and Kittle
stays healthy, and Kittle. I mean, Kittle is definitely part of that. But as long as they have a receiving back out of the backfield, they've got Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Kittle. the quarterback there is going to probably be fantasy viable. Shanahan is going to move the ball down the field, even though he likes to run the ball, and he's going to build off the run. Um, he does that to make sure that these guys have a couple shots down the field. And so I'm I don't know, same situation as Baker. I don't know. I don't know if I'm playing Jimmy. I'd probably play Jimmy over over Baker Mayfield. Yeah, I would play him.
Just because the matchup as well, right? Detroit really doesn't have much on that defensive side. Yeah. So I think that it's a favorable matchup for Jimmy G. It'll
be fun to see Okuda and see how well Jeff Okuda evolves and see how much better he gets this year.
Right. Another quarterback, Joey Burrow, coming off of the knee injury. I know you're high on Cincy as far as, taking that next step. I don't think they really did anything to that offensive line to help out Mixon or Joe Burrow. Their top draft pick doesn't seem to be performing at the rate that they necessarily expected him to. Mm-hmm. He's playing Minnesota, which, like I said, I think has a underrated defense. Not really highly talked about, but pretty solid. Is this a matchup where you would start Joe Burrow, or would you sit him?
If I'm in a super flex league, I would start Joe Burrow. If you have two quarterback positions or a super flex where you get to start another quarterback, then I would start Joe Burrow. But I'm probably not starting him over anybody else. Or not anybody else, but I'm probably not starting him otherwise, I should say.
In a super flex, are you starting him over Baker or Jimmy G this week?
Nope.
Yeah, I think that's a tough matchup. And I mean, you don't know how he's going to be off of that injury, right? I'd probably wait a few weeks to see if he's still that same guy.
Yeah, I think the only people that I'm comfortable playing right away week one with the Cincinnati offense is Mixon and T. Higgins.
Yeah, and even T. Higgins is all dependent on what Joey Burrow looks like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I like the trajectory of that offense. I like the way the offense is going. I know that you have your concerns about their offensive line, and their defense is almost non-existent. But I like the way that the offense is evolving. And even if Zach Taylor doesn't end up being the Sean McVay disciple that people thought he might be, that offense is set up for whatever offensive mind they want to bring in after that.
I feel you. Beats Markey has a question. Nice name, by the way. 0.5, I believe, per was supposed to be PPR. Marquise Brown or Henry, and I believe he means Ruggs. Who you choosing?
Man, that's tough. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I would have said Henry Ruggs just because Marquise Brown looked to be down on the depth chart. I might say Henry Ruggs still. I actually like David Carr a lot this year. I think he's going to surprise quite a few people. Not an MVP type season, but I think he's gonna raise the level of some of these Las Vegas wide receivers. So I think I'd take Henry Ruggs in the half point. If it wasn't half point, if it wasn't PPR, I might go Marquise Brown just because of the way that Baltimore likes to utilize him. Because it's not so much about the catches with Marquise Brown, it's just getting the ball into his hands somehow in open space. But with any type of PPR, I'd probably go with Henry Ruggs.
This is interesting because this is the matchup, right? Las Vegas is playing Baltimore, so you're basically going to be able to see. You're going to see in the same game who goes up. I think it's a no-brainer with Henry Ruggs. I think Marquise Brown is too hit or miss in that Baltimore offense. I think Mark Andrews is the go-to receiver for Lamar Jackson, and then they just brought in Sammy Watkins as well. I think they have a good rookie that they brought in. I think Bateman is the rookie over there as well. So
but I think he's out a couple of weeks.
Oh, is he?
Kind of what that's what I was getting at, is that he's out a couple of weeks.
What about Watkins? Is he supposed to be playing?
Yeah, Watkins ironically seems to be healthy.
So I think that, Marquise Brown is going to be strictly used as a deep threat, and I just don't think they throw the ball down the field that often.
Yeah, and I just think that that's some people kind of feel the same way about Henry Ruggs and the way that his season went last year, is that they didn't utilize him enough, and that there was just a deep threat here and there. But from what I understand, from what I've read, from what I've seen, these Las Vegas wide receivers have kind of stepped up this year, and that it should be a different wide receiver corps.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously probably the person who's getting the most targets is the tight end over there in Waller, and then they have Hunter Renfrow. But I think that Ruggs gets targeted much more than Marquise Brown on a consistent basis, and so right. I always go with the guy who gets targeted more. So for me, I think Ruggs is probably the safer pick if those are your two options to start, especially in a PPR league. Couple more quarterbacks. Carson Wentz versus Seattle. So Carson didn't get to play at all this training camp because of the injury. Seems to be slotted in to be healthy enough to start week 1. But do you trust him against Seattle? Seattle's defense is they're not necessarily like as good as that Legion of Boom defense from back in the day. Yeah. But do you trust a quarterback that hasn't played all training camp to come in and be able to perform at a high level?
Yeah, this one's pretty tough too. I would probably play him. I don't think I own any Carson Wentz shares, but I would probably play him just because of the potential upside. And when that guy, when he's on the field and when he plays, he's pretty much on. There's not a lot wrong with his game, not a lot wrong with his style of play, and he's back with Frank Wright. So if he's healthy enough to play, I'm probably playing Carson Wentz.
Yeah, another thing to pay attention to is obviously Quentin Nelson went down with the injury as well. I don't know if he's starting that week. So that's, if the offensive line isn't intact, that's another thing to pay attention to, especially with Wentz having some of the injury issues or being injured, so I don't know. I think that's maybe one that I'd stay away from just because of the matchup, as well as just him not having much playing time, especially coming off of such an emotional offseason, being traded and whatnot. So I think there's just a lot of question marks there for me. I'd probably, if I have another option, probably go with that other option.
Kind of depends on your team makeup there and what you have for backups. I'm playing him over Joe Burrow. I'm probably playing him over
Jimmy G.
Probably playing him over Jimmy G and Baker. Yeah.
So 2 more I wanted to get your take on. The first one is Hurts, Justin Hurts out of Philly versus Atlanta. Hurts is handed the keys to the car. He's the driver, no competition behind him. Is he somebody that you trust this season? Is he somebody, favorable matchup with Atlanta? Obviously, Atlanta's defense is not very good. Let's talk about week 1 and just, trajectory of how you feel Justin Hurts is going to do as far as being QB1 this year.
Yeah, so, I get this feeling that, it doesn't matter what Philadelphia wants to do with Jalen Hurts. If he's going to be on the field, he's going to be fantasy relevant.
Jalen Hurts, sorry. I was saying Justin Hurts.
So I didn't even get that one. But yeah, I just have this feeling, kind of like last year, where they pulled Carson Wentz and they put Jalen Hurts in, and it was almost just to kind of say, we don't care where we're going. We're just not going to play with Carson Wentz. We'll even play with this guy. Right. And, he's a QB1 in every game that he played in last year. So yeah, I'm playing him. I think that I don't want to put him up there with this guy's name right away, but he really has the Deshaun Watson feel to me, where it's a guy that's brought in, and while he's not drafted as high as Deshaun Watson, there's almost this expectation of failure, this expectation of we brought you in to be the guy, but we don't quite believe you yet, and we need you to go out there and show you and watch out, or we're going to draft somebody. And
Right.
That sucks for that franchise, and I hate to see that happen to Philadelphia. But for fantasy, I'm going to play him. I'm going to play Jalen Hurts, just like Deshaun Watson when the team wasn't doing well last year, or in previous years when somebody gets injured and that team's out of the playoffs. Deshaun Watson, you still played every week, and Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to be the same way. You're going to play him every week just because he's so deadly on his feet, and he has become quite a bit better of a pass thrower or of a ball thrower than what he used to be. His evolution at Oklahoma was really kind of spectacular because that's not what he was at Alabama.
Right.
And he proved that he can throw, that he can find the openings, that he can throw the ball in the NFL.
And he has weapons around him, right? He has a healthy Miles Austin in the backfield.
Yes.
He has Rager. He has,
Miles Austin?
Miles Austin. What did I say?
Miles Austin is what you said. Miles Sanders?
Miles Sanders. Man, we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes, man. My brain is fried. But Miles Sanders, and
you dated yourself with Miles Austin.
Right. Obviously, the two receivers that he has there. I think his deep ball is actually pretty sexy. I think he can throw the ball really well. I do. And obviously a mobile quarterback, so those tend to do really well in fantasy because when the play breaks down, you could go scramble and get some yards that way as well. So really, I don't know too much about the coach, but he seems to be an offensive-minded guy. They seem to be like pretty well settled that he is the guy that's going to be the starter, so he should have a lot of confidence. So I'm with you. I think he's a good pick throughout the year. Let's talk about rookies that you would start. A lot of rookies are going to be, starters this year. We have, pretty much, I think at least 3 that I could think of right off the top of my head that are for sure starters. And then another 2 that might be starting, somewhere down the line in the season. But out of the 3, which are obviously Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, and Zach Wilson, are you starting any of those guys?
I would start all of them in a super flex league, but I'm probably not starting any of them in a single quarterback league yet. Those guys are probably all available on your waiver wire in redraft leagues, single quarterback redraft leagues. Most of them are probably going to be available on your waiver wire. In fact, the one that I'm in, I think all 3 of them are available right now. So, it's not a bad idea to go snatch one of them up, the guy that you think is going to explode or the guy that you think has the highest upside for this season, and stash him on your bench. And, that's your backup, and that's the guy that you use a little bit later on. But I'm probably not rolling any of them out right away in week 1. If I had to do it, that would probably be Trevor. I think he's the one that's the best set up to go out there and have success week 1.
His matchup is very favorable against Houston as well.
Yeah, so that's the one that I would start if I had to pick one. I would start them. They'd all start in my super flex position, and I wouldn't have any problem with that just because they have that floor. They kind of have that 15-point floor, all 3 of these guys. So I don't mind that, but I'm waiting a few weeks before they take over my QB1.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Mac Jones pans out this season. I think that a lot of people hate on him just because obviously he's not the most physical presence, I guess you could say, right, as far as like physique. But he earned the starting position to the point where New England sent an MVP home and said, we don't even need you as the backup, right? You don't need to be on this team. And very accurate guy. I think they obviously are a run first team, but they have upgraded their receivers. They have good tight ends over there. So it's going to be interesting, man. I think that, he's going to be able to he seems like he's the most pro ready, I would say, out of all of the quarterbacks, not only his play, but also the system that he's in New England seems to favor him more than maybe some of the other quarterbacks in their situations. So Mac Jones could be a sleeper that, could be somebody that might be a starter, over some of these guys, especially if you have one of your top quarterbacks go down injured or, COVID or something like that. So he's somebody that I definitely stash on my roster if he's available, just because I think he has a lot of potential upside.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the rookies usually have the name value too. So if you're a guy that likes to stream quarterbacks off the waiver wire, where you don't care about who they are, you just, even the guy you drafted, you'll drop him to pick up the next Fitzpatrick that's out there.
Right.
Or say something drastic happens to Jalen Hurts and you go pick up Gardner Minshew. Those are guys that are all going to be available. They usually they will remain available throughout the season. But Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, these are rookies and they have a name. So if you want that guy and you want to stash him or you believe in him, kind of like we both said, just pick him up now and keep him on your bench and let him sit there.
2 questions before I let you go. Tyrod Taylor and Teddy Bridgewater, are those people that you are looking at keeping on your roster, or are those people that you think we just stay away from?
I keep Teddy on my roster, but I have no reason to have Tyrod Taylor unless he becomes one of those streaming quarterbacks later on. And to be honest, Bridgewater's probably the same. If he's a streaming quarterback, somebody that I will probably be able to get off the waiver wire at some point if I really want him.
If I don't know who Tyrod's throwing to. I don't know who Tyrod's throwing to.
It's Brandon Cooks. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But I don't mind keeping Bridgewater on your team just because the receiving core that he has, the pass catchers on that team, are extremely talented. So
right.
if he's up to snuff and he's a starting quarterback, that's going to be a really late valuable piece or a free piece if you get him off the waiver wire. But I'm not doing it week 1. I'm probably going to wait.
I agree. Excellent, man. Anything else? Any other sleepers? Any other matchups that you really like this week?
No, nothing that's really jumping out at me right now. I think we covered a lot in an hour and 15 minutes. Or hour 20 minutes now. That was good. I guess the only advice that I'd give out right now, and if anybody else listens to like fantasy footballers or any standard league stuff, like this is kind of always talked about. We're coming up on a Thursday night game. So if you have somebody in your flex position that plays on Thursday, take them out of your flex and put them in your starting position because you want that flexibility come Sunday. So sometimes it's if it's a guy like, Chris Godwin, or if it's a guy that's Ezekiel Elliott, you're not going to move him into your flex necessarily.
Right.
Because you want that starting position taken care of. But Leonard Fournette, if you're going to start him, move him into your running back position. That way, you have the opportunity to play whoever you want on Sunday in that flex.
Very good advice from the man, the myth, the legend, Casey. So, guys, I just want to thank everybody who has interacted with us this show. Definitely makes the show go smoother. Hopefully, we help you get some wins and win some money this year. Stick with us. We're going to be doing this every single Wednesday around this same time. Casey, anything that you need to plug? Anything that you got coming your way?
No, that was great. It was fun to interact with people that want to jump in and that are watching us live and asking questions on the spot. That's good interaction. I can talk to Sunil anytime I want, but talking to strangers about football, that's pretty fun.
For sure. Well, we almost went an hour and a half, man. This is definitely the longest show. Definitely worth it and fun. I'm excited. Football starting. We just get to actually
football
see.
Eve.
Yes, football eve. It should be a great week of football. So we will be back next week to go over who to start or sit in week 2. So, guys, thanks for sticking with us. Hope you have a beautiful, safe night, and we will see you next week.